Hello and welcome to my mosaic knitting video tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do mosaic knitting and how to knit this swatch of a tree using just a chart. So a little bit about mosaic knitting. It's a really fun technique where you use slip stitches to create patterns on your knitting. So you use two really high contrast colour yarns. So I've used a really dark navy and a kind of cream colour here, and it's done using slip stitches. So as you work across the row in one colour, whichever colour you're not using, you just slip that stitch, and it creates this kind of grid-like system across your knitting where you can use like little boxes to make your design. So the way that it works is as you slip your stitches, you're creating like these little squares which build up to make the overall design. In this case, it's a tree. It's a really fun technique, deceptively simple to do. So I'm going to show you exactly how to recreate this tree pattern using just the chart. You don't need the written instructions for this one. We're just going to be using a chart to work this swatch. So the chart is available to download, so please do check the notes in the video so you can download the chart and follow along if you want to. I used two really high contrast 4-ply yarns and a 3.75mm needle for this swatch. So apology, it does look a little bit raggedy down the side. I have actually blocked the swatch, so do forgive me for that. But yeah, hopefully it will give you a good idea of exactly what we're aiming for anyway. So just to let you know, I have added some garter stitch rows before I've started the swatch, and I've also added 5 stitches either side just to give it a little bit of a border. So this is a chart that we're going to be working from for our mosaic knitting pattern. And what I love about mosaic knitting charts is that you can clearly see what the pattern is supposed to be. Whereas with the written instructions, you wouldn't be able to tell that the design is supposed to be a tree. When you look at the chart, you can clearly see that it is a tree design. So a few notes on the chart before we get started. We're going to be working each row of the chart twice. So you'll notice here that you've got the number 1 at each end of the first row. So we're going to be working that row twice. So we're going to be knitting across row 1 and then purling back across. So we're going to be working our swatch in stockinette stitch. So any stitches that you knit on the right side, you purl on the wrong side, and any stitches that you slip on the right side, you also slip on the wrong side. So if we look at row 1, we know that we're going to be working with a darker colour, we're going to be knitting across and then purling back. For row 2, this is where we're going to be introducing the slip stitch. So here we're going to be switching to the second colour, the lighter colour, and we're going to be working the row as a slip 1, knit 1 all the way across. So when it comes to working row 2, we're going to slip that first stitch, and that's going to carry up the dark colour yarn to that row, and then we're going to knit the next stitch in the lighter colour. So it's going to go slip, knit all the way across. When we get to the end of row 2, we're going to reverse that. So we're going to slip the first stitch as we did on the right side and then purl the knit stitch that we made in the lighter colour yarn. So that way we maintain the stockinette stitch. So it's going to be slip, purl, slip, purl, and so on to the end of the row. Row 3 is exactly the same as row 1. We're going to knit across and then purl back. And row 4 is where things start to get a little bit more interesting, as that's where we're going to be starting to work our tree design. So we'll take a look at that when we get to that point. But for now, let's work rows 1 to 3. I've cast on already, and like I said, I've added an extra 5 stitches before the beginning of the chart and at the end, just to give my swatch a little bit of a border so that it lies flat. I've also worked 8 rows of garter stitch, alternating between the 2 colours every 2 rows. So that looks a little something like this. Like I said, it's just to give my swatch a little bit of a border, but you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can go straight into the chart as it is. So at this point, I'm ready to work row 1. So I'm just going to pop this at the top here so we can still see the row. And we know that we're going to be using the darker colour yarn for row 1. And we're going to be knitting across and purling back in the darker colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to join that darker colour here and just work my first 5 border stitches Again, if you don't want to work the border stitches, you don't have to. You can just knit the swatch exactly as it is. But because I'm doing the border stitches, I'm just going to pop a marker in here so I know exactly when I'm going to be starting the chart. So this is where we're going to be working the charts, and I'm ready to work row 1. So this is really straightforward. It's just knit across the row. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that's the right side of row 1 there, and you can see I've put my stitch markers in just to keep my border stitches separated. So I'm just going to turn that around now so we can work back across row 1 and do our purl stitches. And because I'm working a 5-stitch border, I'm just going to knit those first 5 stitches. After this, I won't be showing the border stitches being knitted, it will just be focused on the chart. So just going to slip my stitch there, bring the yarn to the front because this is going to be a purl row, and then I'm just going to purl back across row 1. So now we have row 1 completed, and it's just a straightforward knit and purl row. So row 2 is where things start to get a little bit more interesting as we're going to be introducing that slip stitch. So we're going to be working this slip stitch pattern. So after my edge marker, I'm going to slip the first stitch, which will be in the darker yarn, and then knit in the lighter yarn. So slip knit all the way across. I'm going to take this printed pattern away because it's interfering with what my camera seems to be focusing on. So I'm just going to remove that, but I'll pop it as a graphic on the screen so you can still follow along the chart as we go. So here we are ready to start the right side of row 2 with the lighter yarn. So I'm just going to slip that first stitch and then knit the next stitch in the lighter yarn. So slip, knit, knit, and so on all the way across row 2. So at the end of row 2, you can see that we've got alternating colours going across the row. We've got the slip 1, knit 1 pattern happening across there. So for the wrong side row, just bring the yarn to the front as it's going to be a purl row, but we're going to slip that first stitch as we slipped it on the right side, and then purl the knit stitch that we made with a lighter colour yarn. So slip, purl, slip, purl, all the way back across row 2. So at the end of the wrong side of row 2, it should look something like this. So row 3 is worked in exactly the same way as row 1, in that we're going to be using the darker colour, and we're going to be knitting all the way across the right side and purling all the way across the wrong side. So I'll go ahead and do that and then join you for row 4. So row 4 is where things start to get interesting, in that we're going to be introducing our tree design. So we're going to be knitting 3 stitches that are going to be the base of our tree. So if you follow the chart, we can see that we are going to be working a slip 1, knit 1 pattern. So we're going to be doing slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip. And then this is where we're going to be introducing the tree pattern. So these next 3 stitches are all going to be knit stitches. So I'm going to knit all 3 of those stitches. And then I'm going to continue working that slip 1, knit 1 pattern all the way across to the end of the row. So you've got those 3 stitches there that are going to be the base of the tree. So turn the work around, and then we're going to be working back across row 4. Bring the yarn to the front as it's a purl row, and then we're just going to be working that slip 1, purl 1 pattern. So slip, purl the stitch that we knitted in the previous row, slip, purl, purl, slip, purl, slip, and then we reach those 3 stitches that we knitted on the right side row. So we're going to be purling those 3 stitches. So purl, 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 and then you can continue back across the wrong side of row 4, just doing your slip 1, purl 1 stitch. And this is what it looks like at the end of row 4. So for the next row, row 5, we're going to be working with a darker colour again. So we're going to bring that back into play and then just knit all the way across to those 3 stitches that we made to start our tree design. So once we reach those 3 stitches, if we look at the chart, we can see we're going to be doing a slip, knit, slip, stitch, and then we can continue knitting across the rest of row 5. Then we can turn our work and work back across row 5 in exactly the same way as we've been doing before, where we are purling all of those knit stitches and slipping those slip stitches that we made on the right side of the row. So here we are, just purling all the way back until we reach that first slip stitch, and then we're going to slip, purl, slip, and then carry on purling all the way across the wrong side of row 5. And at the end of row 5, this is what it should look like. So rows 6 and 7 are worked in exactly the same way as rows 4 and 5. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will catch up with you after that and we can take a look at row 8 together. So here we are at the end of row 7, ready to start row 8, and you can clearly see the patterning start to take shape. You've got these little boxes starting to form, which are going to build up our tree design. So for row 8, we are going to be introducing the bottom row of the tree. So we're going to start introducing that lighter colour much sooner. So as we work across row 8, we're going to slip that first stitch, knit the next one, slip the next one, and now we're ready to work that run of knit stitches. So we're just going to knit across. It's actually 15 stitches that we're going to be knitting across for this row. So just go ahead and knit those in the lighter colour yarn. And then those last 3 stitches are going to be a slip, knit, slip. So that's at the end of row 8 on the right side. If we reverse it and come back and do the wrong side of the row, to start we are going to slip that first slip stitch, purl that knit stitch, slip the slip stitch, and then purl back across those 15 knit stitches. Finish the row with a slip 1, purl 1, slip 1, and that is the end of row 8. And you can clearly see there you've got the bottom branch, I guess I'll call it, of your tree. So the next row we're going to switch to the darker colour yarn and we're going to be doing some more slip stitches to create those little boxes. So we're just going to knit to the start of our tree design, and then we're going to start working the slip 1, knit 1 sequence. So slip that first stitch, knit the next, slip, knit, slip, knit, and so on all across those 15 stitches that we made for the bottom branch of the tree. Then once those stitches are worked, we can then knit across to the end of row 9. So quick sense check here to check that we've got the alternating stitches, which we have. So now we can work back across row 9 doing those purl stitches and then alternating between the slip and purl stitches for the main tree design. And that is what it should look like at the end of row 9. So rows 10 and 11 are worked in exactly the same way as rows 8 and 9. So I'm going to go ahead and do those rows, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like from there. So here we are at the end of row 11, and you can really clearly see now those little boxes starting to take shape and our tree design coming to life. And hopefully at this point you're starting to get the hang of doing the slip and knit or slip and purl stitches for the right side and wrong side rows. So I'm going to go ahead and work row 12, but this time I'm going to put a couple of mistakes in. So here I've completed row 12, but I've made a couple of mistakes on this row. So if we look at row 12, it should be a slip, knit, slip stitch to start, but I've actually done a knit stitch instead of a slip stitch. So we need to go back and fix that. And then at this end, I've slipped a stitch, which should have been a knit stitch. So I'm also going to go back and fix that. So the good news is that you can fix any mistakes on the next row, so you don't have to think back. And the sooner you spot a mistake, the easier it is to fix. But the principle is very much the same for any missed, slipped or missed knitted stitches. So let's go ahead and start row 13, and then we can fix the mistakes as we go along. So at the beginning of row 13, it should be a slip, knit, slip stitch from the previous row, but it's actually a slip, knit, knit. So it's that second knit stitch that I need to fix and make a slip stitch. So to do that, all I'm going to do is just slip that knit stitch onto the needle. I'm just going to pinch my work there so it doesn't unravel, pull the needle out of that stitch, and then just unladder it, and then pick up that darker yarn, which should have been the slip stitch, and then just pop that back on the needle, and then I can go ahead and knit that as it should be on this row. So that's fixed the mistake on the previous row. So on this row, row 13, I'm actually going to be knitting the next 2 stitches as part of the mosaic design. So I'm just going to go ahead and knit those. And then we are into our slip 1, knit 1 sequence. So I'm just going to carry on slipping and knitting until we get to that rogue stitch that we accidentally made on the previous row. So here, this rogue slip stitch should have actually been a knit stitch in the lighter colour yarn. So I need to go back and rectify that. So I'm just going to pop the stitch onto the right hand needle, and then you've got these 2 floats here at the back. So all we need to do is pick up that first float and just ladder that stitch over, and then pick up the next float. Oops. Just grab the top float and then just leapfrog the stitch over the top float. And by doing this, we've now reinstated that knit stitch that should have been worked on the previous row. So if I look at the chart, these 2 last light coloured stitches need to be knitted with the darker yarn to continue the tree pattern. So I'm just going to do that and then knit to the end of the row. So if we turn that round, we can see that our stitches are now back on track. We've got that slip stitch continuing there and the knit stitch where it should be. So I'm just going to work the wrong side row, and then we can take a better look at how that looks afterwards. So at the end of row 13, if we just take a look at where we fixed our mistakes, sometimes what you might notice is where you've had to put a knit stitch in, it might appear just a little bit tight. So you can just go in and just kind of manipulate the stitches a bit, just kind of pull that lighter colour through just so it becomes a little bit more prominent and doesn't kind of get lost in the background of the darker colour. And of course, blocking at the end will also help with any stitch irregularities or tension. That will really help set the stitches in place as well. So hopefully that's given you a good overview of mosaic knitting and how it works. I'm going to go ahead and finish knitting this swatch so I can show you what it looks like at the end. And hopefully this has got you to a good enough place where you can continue working the chart and finish it too. So here we have our finished tree design, and if we put that next to the chart, you can clearly see that it looks like the tree it's supposed to, which is why I love working from Mosaic Knitting charts. It's just so visual and easy to follow. So I really hope this video has helped to explain Mosaic Knitting. If you have any questions at all or need any help, please do not hesitate to contact me via email or via the website. Otherwise, happy knitting!